KnockBack, the retro and nostalgia podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to KnockBack. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined, as always, by my brother, Dagan Chigurh. Moriarty, Dagan, thank you for joining me today. How are you, my friend?
Call it.
Should call it.
Call it.
Jesus Christ.
We were just talking about, before we went live, I was wondering to Colin, which I do from time to time. I said, did I wear this t-shirt the very last time we recorded? And he said, I don't think so. And then he went in and investigated for me and everything like that. But I thought of a solution to this, Colin, the interim minutes here. What we could do is, to avoid that problem ever rearing its ugly head, just go topless every other podcast.
Sure. There you go.
Then you could never repeat a t-shirt.
Show those breasts.
Those breastises.
Those
hairy nips.
Then neep nops. Well, that's fine. We can do that if you want. I don't know if that's allowed on. I don't think nipples are allowed on Twitch, but I think they're allowed on YouTube.
Oh, is that right?
Female nipples. Something's weird because something's weird with that. I don't know.
Well, if you say no nips on Twitch, then you got to make it apply to everybody, right? You got to make it apply to male, female, every other thing in between, he, she, they, the whole thing. But yeah, and we don't have what's that social media, like sort of Patreon for like sexy Twitch?
Oh, OnlyFans.
OnlyFans.
Yeah.
I don't think we have to worry about OnlyFans.
No. I don't think so either. Well, my friend, it's good to be here with you today. Our topic is No Country for Old Men, which is a fan voted topic over on Patreon. The film, however, the film, since I'm a Cormac McCarthy fan, although I've not read many of his books, The Road is like my favorite book ever. And I don't know why I've not read more of his, but when I saw this come up, I went ahead and I bought the book and I read it. And I just spent 3 different sessions in the pool. It probably took like 4 hours. It's not a very long book.
Wow, that's impressive. Still, you read fast.
Yeah, but you have to really remember, like I'm holding it up for people if they can see it. It's not very dense.
No, it's not too intimidating.
And you know how Cormac McCarthy does his dialogue for pages sometimes? I'm trying to find an example.
And he doesn't use quotes,
right?
Usually.
Where like it comes like this is a page, so you can really flip through pretty quick.
It moves.
And I read The Road in one sitting, like I famously said. I read it overnight. It was so good. And The Road, I think, is bigger than this.
That speaks to Colin so much.
So this book was I was glad to do it because I was just like, I don't actually even know what the movie's about. I mean, that was how kind of ignorant I was about it. I'm like, I'm not really sure what the fuck it's about. The title doesn't say anything about it. I don't know how I've gotten so far without really understanding it. So I was like, I'm just going to read it and not look at anything else. And so I did that. And then I watched the film. And we'll get to that. But Dig, I want to begin as we always do with, if you have anything you want to get off your chest, off those nips.
Off those hairy nips.
Yeah, if you got anything to get off them nips, let me know now.
Well, you know what I thought you might find funny, and I brought this up on the last show that I would discuss this for our opening, and it kind of hit me over the head like a sledgehammer. One of those things that happens, and it'll give you guys a little bit of a Dagan origin story, maybe. So this kind of running joke that I'm not really sure if I could refer to as a joke with Helene and I is this thing that dates back our whole relationship. Now, we just celebrated our 20-year anniversary, as you know, Kyle. So we've been married for 20 years. We've been together for 20. Thank you so much. Been together for 26, 27 years because we were together 6-7 years prior to getting married. And then we were friends before we even got together. So we let's just say the better part of 30 years, right? And I'm a 48-year-old man. So I've known Helene for a long time. And she has this thing, this sort of running gag or nag or playful thing that she says that from time to time over decades now, where she's like, our life would have never arrived at this point, whatever said point would be at that moment in time, if I didn't initiate it, if I didn't plan it, meaning her. So she'll say things like, we would never be married. We would have never got engaged. We would have never owned a home, our second home, have a child, a second child, all this kind of stuff. If I wasn't the initiator, if I wasn't the catalyst and everything like that. And now I like to think every relationship has the planner. That just makes me feel better because maybe a relationship with two planners. I just can't speak to that. Now, Helene really is the planner. She really gets excited about things. She gets the ball in motion. She gets the gears turning. She loves to do research. She loves to just sort of plan out things. And I'm really not that way. I think I'm a little more laid back when it comes to that. C, lazy when it comes to that. I'll totally take responsibility for that. But she's made the joke before and we kind of laugh it off. And then I never really gave it much thought. And then I really started to think about it. And I was like, holy shit. It's pretty crazy to think that that is probably true. And the only thing, it really left me with this one thought, right? Which is the only thing I've really had jurisdiction over, pure 100% jurisdiction over, is my career. And now I'm speaking about my career in animation. Of course, the podcast came along 4 or 5 years ago and all that kind of thing. But I'm talking about my work, salary, career, what I do for a living. That's the really only thing I've had pure jurisdiction over. And everything else in my life, especially since we've been married, but really larger than that, since we've been together, has been largely of Helene's doing. And I feel it is funny to talk about. And I'm sure, listen, I don't mean to stereotype relationships, men and women, but I'm sure a lot of guys out there listening to me in relationships can speak to this too, right? But I never really was cognizant of it beyond it being this running gag joke in our relationship. And so I took it upon myself to plan our vacation to celebrate our 20-year anniversary, which I was telling you about yesterday. We're going to go out to Cape Cod, which I've never been there. We'll see Martha's Vineyard. We'll go to Nantucket. We'll go. What is?
I once knew a man from Nantucket.
Was his bleep so long he could suck it? I think
I had a shirt in college, very early 2000 cert, that just said, "I am that man from Nantucket." I don't fit in it anymore, or I would wear it.
That's the best T-shirt I've ever heard of. and I know T-shirts, dude. So that was my big thing, and it wasn't. Now here's the funny bit. She was the catalyst for me doing that. She basically told me in not so many words, really in so many words, that this is on you. You're planning this trip. It's got to be something that's completely of your doing, your research. She's not talking about monetary things, but she's just saying this has to be your grunt work. You have to kind of put in the time and effort to do this thing. And I really felt like the marriage might be on tenterhooks if I don't do this. So I took it very seriously. And she was kind of constantly reminding me, because I think she knows me, that in the past she would have just taken the reins. But so that's kind of where I'm at with it now, where it's like, yeah, you gotta grow up in this way. Like, you gotta kind of take the reins and you gotta take the wheel on some of these things. And she says the same things about with the kids, like getting them registered for dance for the year, getting them registered for basketball camp, whatever it is. Like, she really does do a shitload. So shout out to Helene. And I'm going to let you guys know how it goes on a running basis with me kind of taking over some of the household responsibilities, because, man, I've spent the better parts of 2 decades not really doing shit, basically, which is pretty crazy to think about. Yeah,
I mean, it's you're kind of overstating the fact, though. I mean, you are a breadwinner, a hard worker,
yes,
dad,
true,
and fastidious, which I don't think you give yourself enough credit for. Like with taking care of the house and all the rest. Because
thank you.
I get you in the sense that I know when to take advantage of opportunities and when to strike, I think, professionally in a lot of ways. And I've always been good at just taking advantage of those opportunities, but personal opportunities, I'm just like, nah. And so I've been quite lazy about those things as well. We already talked about it on Sacred Symbols, but in asking Micah to marry me, I planned an evening out
Sure.
in Richmond at a really nice hotel and nice restaurant and all that kind of stuff. And that was like, that was me to my very limits, probably of organizational. Of organizational prowess. The camera keeps falling on me over and over again on my shows. I got to figure this out.
Oh yeah.
But because it's like, let me see here. Can I
put a little like card behind it?
I think that might do the trick. I'm not very smart. I don't know how many times I have to tell people that I'm just like, people are like, Colin, one of the things people think is like, oh, Colin, you're intelligent on this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, not really, because I can't get this camera to even stand up. But in my domestic life, I must say that Micah and I have just a division of labor. Like it just kind of fell that way. Very traditional. I'm pretty traditional. Like I wouldn't mind. I kind of want to have a traditional life. Like I wouldn't mind if she didn't work. I wouldn't mind that kind of thing.
Sure.
So
and it works. That formula works for you guys.
Yeah, like I'm the kind of the breadwinner in quotes. She has a job. She works with us, but it's I pay the bills and do all that kind of stuff, and I take care of the outside of the house, like the pool, the lawn, the gardens, and all of that. Okay. And then she takes care of everything inside. She does the shopping. Clean. She cooks.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I do the food shopping. So that is one. Yeah, you got to kind of make it work for you. And if it's not working, you make adjustments, right? You kind of evolve it so everybody's happy. You got to kind of check in with each other. But will we reach that 3rd decade mile marker?
We'll see.
Maybe with some adaptation.
It sounds like you might. I mean, it sounds like you might.
I think we'll be okay. All right.
What are you? What are your children going to do? They're kind of old enough to watch themselves, right?
Yeah, well, that's a big thing. We just talked about. We went out for dinner for our anniversary last weekend, a little late, and we were talking about that. It's like so nice now. Lilia's 15, going on 16. Graydon will be 12 in a month. So they're old enough to stay home. So it's like we could run out to the restaurant for 3 or 4 hours, go do this, that, see a movie. We don't have to really be that concerned. We're not going to leave them overnight. Who God knows some risky business.
That was what I was asking, was that when you go to Cape Cod, were they going to stay by themselves?
Oh, no, they'll stay with Helene's parents.
Oh, because I was going to say, I think they're kind of old enough. I mean, Dad used to, 15? Dad was going upstate to see his weird girlfriends, and I would.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point. You were staying home overnight for days at a time.
Oh, yeah. I was just left alone at Mom's, too. I mean, I was alone all the time, too. I was watching myself. That's why I think it's so funny about how our sisters especially are very careful and very motherly and stuff, which is cool. Our mom was motherly, but I was like, you have to understand, the day that I started 4th grade, I started watching myself from the morning before I went to school until probably like 7 at night. You
were latchkeying it up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I don't really think that that's a big deal, to be honest with you. It's not like I'm like, oh, where was my mom to cook me food? I would literally do whatever I wanted. I would come home from school. I'd go to Cumberland Farms. I'd steal money from her boyfriend, from his change jar, and go and buy fucking donuts and shit.
I was going to ask about this. You're not mobile at that age, so
no. But I was riding my bike around and all that
food, right?
Right. Watching TV, playing games. Like it was so. To me, it's so funny when I ask, because sometimes in my mind I'm like, maybe Mike and I will go on a vacation, and maybe Declan can watch our house or whatever, and he's going to be in 11th grade, I think. Yes, and to me, I'm like, of course. And I think Dana was like, no. I'm like, dude, I was like 13, 14, 15 years old, just alone from like Thursday night until Monday, basically.
Yeah, sometimes. That was the 90s and early aughts, right?
Yeah, and it
wasn't that long ago.
But the point is that I don't think that was like wrong. It's like my dad was like, you're a fucking 15 years old. Like, here's $40 if you want to order some food. I stocked everything up. Your dumb stoner friends are across the street. I'll see you in a few days. And nothing ever came of it. I mean, I'd have to kind of, like I always said, had to kind of plan around when Dad would come home. Got to get the heat on a certain thing. Got to make sure that I'm not blasting out and ruining his beautiful speakers.
Get everything back on an even keel.
Like I say, like him turning the corner from South Country Road onto Woodland and me just running into the house to try to lower the music before he gets home, and hopefully he doesn't see me. And it would always be like, I saw you running into the house. What did you do?
So great, dude. See, now the difference between you being solo, my kids are as thick as thieves, right? Now, we're very fortunate in that regard. Boy, girl, 3.5 years apart. But there's really no sibling rivalry there. They have a really good relationship. And I think mischief could kind of get into the equation there. There could be mischief afoot if we leave these two alone together, because they'll get up to no good, I think, because they're kindred spirits. They kind of think each other are hilarious, and which is great. It makes for a very pleasant household, but I don't want to, I don't want that risky business
than you and Dana,
lampshade on the head. Yes. Yeah. Almost. Well, Dana and I were closer in age. We were a year and a half apart. We still are a year and a half apart. I think that that very strategic 3.5 years is big, because, and isn't that funny? It's just add a year or two into the equation and the dynamic is completely different. Not always, but in this
Lilia doesn't chase Graydon with a butcher knife.
Did Dana ever do that? Cleaver, butcher knife. And she was fast. She ran track. I was running for my life. That was, talk about serial killers, dude.
We got to do the growing up Moriarty one day. I think she's kind of the problem with getting that done. I think she's like more. Dana's like the more reserved one of all of us now.
Definitely.
I think in some way.
But she's also, I've said this before, I've gone on record, and I'll say this till the day I die. She is the funniest, and she will have the audience in stitches. She's very dry. She's witty. She's extremely sarcastic. And, she's a good storyteller too. And she enjoys those strolls down memory lane. I think she would have fun. It's just getting her to the mic, sit down with the headphones on, that first 5 minutes, like dragging the mule with digging their heels in. But once she's on, I think she will have a good time. It's just getting her into that seat.
Yeah, she's the one that's probably had the least to drink and done the fewest drugs. So she also probably has the best memory out of the four of us.
That's a good point. Maybe that's what it is. She's smart. I mean, she's so smart.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd like to make that happen. Like I said, I think we should just come to Richmond when you're all here and we just go to a studio and just record it, pay someone to have it done so we don't have to worry about any of it. And we just come in and talk about it. I think it'll be hysterical. I think what she's worried about is, I don't know if it's like getting in trouble. I don't think that's what it is, but I think she's like worried her students will find out and think less of her or something like that. I'm like, touchy. I think
that's a touchy thing.
Is touchy, but I'm like, isn't the opposite probably true? In some way, like you do a pretty popular, KnockBack's not like the biggest podcast in the world, but it's bigger than 99.9% of podcasts in the world. And that would be kind of cool to be on it, right? I mean, that kind of gives you a little credibility. See, she does I get a little insulted with Dana because she does a podcast, like a section of one of her classes every year where they like do their own podcast and I think listen to podcasts and study them or whatever. And I'm like,
yes,
your brother is a famous podcaster who made his entire career on podcasting. Do you want me to help you in any way? And I think part of the reason she doesn't is because she doesn't, reputationally, that could hurt her.
Yeah. She doesn't want to blend those two worlds. There's wisdom in that sometimes, but I think this is completely not a concern for doing this show with the four sibs. I don't think that would be.
I don't think so either. I mean, but it's what she thinks. It's like, oh, so these guys turn on, a podcast to see what it's all about. And there's my brothers talking about showing their breasts on YouTube. So I get it.
Airy nips.
And if not for the illegality on Twitch, would Colin be shirtless all the time? I remember, I actually do remember, we used to use lapel mics at IGN and lapel mics are kind of funny.
Okay.
And we don't use them here. And I used to sometimes take my shirt off and hang at kind of funny and hang the lapel mic on my chest hair, which I thought was pretty funny. So that would be fun to do that.
That is fair.
There's pictures out there of that for sure.
Bring that back. That's what I say. It's my
good friend. My good friend, my brother. By the way, Dave, let me ask you just in real time right now.
Please.
You're gonna be my best man, right?
My gosh, I'm honored. I
was yours.
There's a lot of talk in my household about this wedding.
Is that right?
People want. We joked with you guys about the destination wedding and stuff, but Lily and Helene are both like, is it going to be fancy and formal and nice? Or like, are we going to be able to are they going to have a wedding? And I'm like, Uncle Kyle's going to have a wedding. They just got, first of all, big congrats. I haven't said that on air.
Thank you.
Huge congrats. We're so happy and proud of you guys. But, I said they just got it. They just made it official a week ago. Give them a little time. I get the whens, the wheres. I'm like, just ride it out. We got to ride it out. Sometimes you got to plan these things.
Yeah. Well, no, we do. I mean, I think we're looking at fall 2023. I thought because in my mind, this is what I'm saying. I'm fucking stupid. So in my mind, I'm like, why can't we just get married right away? Like, I don't understand. In my mind, I always thought people were like, no, we got to prepare and make every time. But I'm like, what's the point? We have a small group of people that are coming. I think it's going to be like 50 people.
Okay.
And so like, I'm inviting core family members, my siblings, their kids, a couple aunts, couple uncles, and then a small selection of friends. Okay. And we're not having wedding parties. I'm just having a best man, she's just having a maid of honor.
Oh, that's interesting to know. Okay. Well, I'm honored.
Yeah. Which I feel a little bad about because I've been in 3 different people's weddings outside of you and I cannot reciprocate on that, but it's just not the way it's going to be.
Yeah, that's okay. You can't feel that way.
Right.
Can't always do that.
They're invited, of course. But so we're going to do all of that. But then I was like, yeah, let's just get married. Let's I know we have to reserve a place, but it's like, let's just get this over with. I mean, and I don't think I realized in my Neanderthal brain that the reason that it takes so long to get married is because you have to wait, like to find a venue, to get the dress, to do this, to find the catering. I had no idea. I mean, I don't know why I thought, yeah, let's get married in October.
Right.
Like, what's the big deal?
Right. 3 months.
It's like October. Are you fucking crazy? That's so I'm learning, but I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to do a custom suit. And
nice.
I'm going to get the CLS logo emblazoned on it somewhere. The moon
fucking awesome
logo emblazoned on it.
That's so good.
And maybe on the lapel or on the arm. I don't know.
Dude,
like Chappelle would do with his C or something like that.
What a touch. I love it.
So I'm going to do that. It'll be fun. So yeah, we're looking forward to that, but we have to, to answer some of your inquiries, we're going to do it in Richmond and we're actually looking at places next week. It's going to be nice. It's going to be at a nice, like originally we were looking at the gardens, the botanical gardens in Richmond.
Oh, it's beautiful.
But we don't want to go outside. We think that's a mistake.
Okay.
So we're looking at fall 2023 to avoid the ridiculous heat. It's 95 degrees in here right now. Very nice. So October, she was concerned about my birthday being in October. I'm like, I don't care. In fact, let's get married on my birthday so we can just knock these both out at the same time.
Double duty.
But I was telling her, mom and dad got married October 1st. Dad's birthday is October 2nd. So I'm like, it's not unprecedented and I don't care. And I'm very similar to dad. It's like, whatever, dude, you can forget about my birthday.
Yeah, I don't care about any of that. It's 1 year.
And yeah, we're just going to have a small, maybe 50, maybe 60 max. Really, but we are going to be at a really nice place. I think we're looking at a place that Thomas Jefferson actually owned. Which is
shit.
Cool. Yeah, like an old colonial place.
Oh, that's so calm too. I love that.
And then we want to have like craft cocktails. And she had a really great idea, and she was saying it in joke. I wonder what you think of this. She was saying this in jest. Sorry, we're taking forever to get to the topic. But she was saying this in jest. But I was straight up like, when she said it, I was like, that is a fucking awesome idea.
Let me hear.
And she was like, what if we did breakfast?
Oh.
And I was like, dude, that is such an awesome idea. Like to have pancakes and French toast and an omelet station and all this crazy shit, like something you've never seen before.
No.
At a wedding like that. Why not? I was like, like, are you serious? Because I think that's a really good idea. And she's like, well, not really. And so in my back of my mind,
would love that,
dude. In the back of my mind, I'm like, that sounds actually hysterical. Like everyone would always remember that. You will have never done that at a wedding before or since.
And delicious.
Yeah. And we'll have. So I don't know. We'll play. We have time, but everyone's invited. What I'm wondering, Dave, Lil is 15, right? So she'll be 16. She'll be 17 in the fall of 2023, won't she?
16. No, because she won't be 16 until March.
That's right. Okay, you're right.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking with her and with Declan, +1s. I mean, is it possible?
That's a possibility. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, at that age, I don't know.
It's tough. I mean, it's tough. I mean, I'm just throwing in the idea out there. I didn't have a +1 at your wedding, but one of your groomsmen's dates certainly wanted to be my +1. And I was all about it.
Oh, I remember her.
I do too. She's awesome. Very well. I still.
She was a great kid. I say kid. But
yeah, she was great.
She was super cool.
I can't believe that was 20 years ago. I remember that. I remember your wedding so well.
Does not feel like 20 years ago, which I think bodes well.
I remember being in the pool before. Remember being in the pool in the wedding?
Yes.
Before the wedding with all of your groomsmen. I think Brian was like smoking weed.
It's funny. My memory's slipping, but that day, for some reason, every detail, every part of the day, it's like emblazoned in my memory. It really is. It doesn't feel like 20 years ago. It really doesn't.
No, it's crazy.
It really doesn't. God, getting old.
Yeah, long ass time ago. All right, let's get into the topic.
All
Sorry
right,
about
my
that.
friend. Let's
People
do
say
it.
they like these diet. I think as long as I don't get into politics, people don't mind. Okay. So as I said, the topic is No Country for Old Men, the film from 2007, Coen Brothers film. This was a topic that was voted on Patreon. Remember, you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. Part of your perks over there, early access to all the shows, but also submit your topic ideas and then vote on other topic ideas. We have an election every month. So 1 out of every 4 or 5 episodes that we do is fan voted. And this one won. So as I said at the top, not being familiar at all with it, went and read it, got that out of the way, watched the movie yesterday. It was on Amazon Prime. I rented it for like $3.
Okay.
I didn't know this, Dagan, and I'm sure you did. You've seen this movie. You're much more familiar with it. I didn't know that this was an Academy Award winning movie. I had no idea that this movie was so well regarded. And I have to say, I liked it a lot, but I don't think I like it that much. I thought it was great. But I don't think it, I was surprised by that. And I wonder, God, it's so strange because having read it, it almost makes me wonder how I would have felt about it if I didn't read it. I don't know if I was distracted by that or if it added to it. But I do know that it wasn't a net neutral. It definitely affected me in some way. And one of the things I kept reflecting on, and I don't know if you agree, is I was just like, this is exactly the way I saw it. This is especially the scene when Moss is sneaking up, or like he sees the trucks in the distance on the Vista he's hunting. Like I saw it all like that. All the trucks all parked facing each other. I saw it like that in my head for some reason. And the motel rooms, I saw exactly the way they were. So they did a really nice job, like we were simpatico with that. But then there were other things that distracted me. There are things that happen in the book that do not happen in the movie. And there are things that happen in the movie that do not happen in the book, including really important things. Like her refusing to call the coin at the end. That doesn't happen in the book.
No.
She calls the coin in the book. And so there are meaningful changes that I wonder about. And there are some pacing issues that make me wish that they came up with this idea to kind of option this 10 years later, because I think it would have been like a really good 5-episode miniseries. I feel like it moves fast. And I feel like part of what makes the book operate so well, in my opinion, is even though it's short and brisk, you almost can feel every moment. It spends a lot of time by chapter with each person in location. And what he does is he changes locations quickly and changes things because of how he writes. So like you said, he doesn't use quotations. He doesn't use apostrophes in a lot of different ways, possessive apostrophe. There's a lot of weird shit he doesn't do. And I don't really understand quite how he got away with that, by the way. I was talking to Mike about that. I'm like, I don't know why Cormac McCarthy is allowed to not use English grammar rules, but he's not. He doesn't have to. So there were some things that were missing.
Baby.
So it's funny because I always want to have that grounding element of having as much information as I can typically. Yet here, all I know, I can't identify if it made it better or worse. All I know is that I probably would have looked at it much differently had I not read it. So tell me about your experience with this film and the book, because I imagine with the film coming out in 2007 and the book in 2005 that they optioned this before it was out and got going on the movie pretty quickly. So they saw something in it. They must have.
Yeah.
True. So talk to me about this, Dave. I don't think we've done a Coen Brothers movie yet either.
We did Big Lebowski.
Oh, Big Lebowski, of course.
That's the only one I think that we've done so far, and we'll do more. I'm sure we'll get to Fargo eventually, certainly.
Definitely. It's Amazon's recommending me that now that I
they are? Yeah, now
this,
your queue is going to be all Coen Brothers-esque. I first of all, I have to say, I know this movie every which way. I've seen this movie multiple times. And I had a slightly different trajectory than you, Kyle, because I saw the movie before I read the book. And since I've reread the book, I've listened to the audiobook, which is actually pretty excellent. And I've seen the movie again multiple times. I watched it twice, I think, maybe even more than twice, just for our conversation. And I'll start by saying, as the KnockBack faithful surely know already, we worship at the altar of Cormac McCarthy anyway, right? But I do think this film is a masterpiece, and I think it's even better than the book. Now, I kind of feel for you because I think this is a film you really have to sit with. I think this is a film you have to see multiple times. I think you have to kind of let it wash over you, ruminate, gestate, let it sort of seep into your pores a little bit and then rewatch it. It's a movie that I think a lot of people identify as one of the best movies ever. A lot of people identify it as the best movies of the last 20 years or so. And one of the Coen Brothers' best. And, these are among the greatest directors who ever lived, right? I think writing, dialogue, casting, acting, directing, of course, Roger Deakins, cinematography, the level of detail, which equals, I think, a high level of rewatchability. And it's a strange beast because for as bleak and grim of a story and a movie this is, I think it has an equal level of entertainment and just, it's kind of a unique beast in that way. It's very entertaining. It's very compelling. I think it's a masterwork of suspense and tension. And I don't see over 2 hours that many chinks in the armor. And it's somewhat faithful to the book. It's not 100% faithful to the book. It's maybe 75% faithful to the book, I would say. But, I think it's amazing because every time I watch it, and I know it pretty intimately, I come away with just as many questions as questions that weren't previously satisfied, and I think that's what really makes it so daunting and so compelling to go back and revisit, because is it a horror film? Is it a work of tension? Is it drama? Is it a new play on a Western? What is it? Is it an amalgamation of all those things? I'm not sure, but there's so much to talk about with the story. And it's really, I realize, like, it's one of my favorites. And it's funny when you compare it to something else we've talked about by the Coen Brothers, like The Big Lebowski, because I prefer a movie with that tone. It has a wit. It has a certain level of humor. It has that dark comedy edge. And even though there's some comedy and some levity in this, oddly, this is a much darker film, obviously. I usually prefer The Big Lebowski formula, but I'm all in for this movie, man. I just think, honestly, I think it would be hard to replicate something like this. And, it's just, I couldn't wait to see what you think. And it also gives me a new level of appreciation for our audience in this being a fan voted topic. I mean, I love you guys anyway, but now, your stock just went up in my book too, no pun, because this is one I couldn't wait to talk about.
Yeah, I was excited to get to this one too. I want to be clear that I think that the movie is excellent. I agree with you because you said that there are like no noticeable chinks in the armor. I think that's a great way of putting it. Like, I don't really know very much what's wrong with it. I think I'm just surprised by how much people took to it because it is so, I don't know. I feel like it's so weird. I feel like what's especially weird about the movie that's even more weird than the way it comes off in the book is the whole Carson Wells thing. Like, I feel like that is so confusing in the movie. I think that is one. I think it's confusing in the book. I'm totally not even sure what the hell that's all about. Like the whole thing where he's just hired by some company or something. And I don't really get it at all in the book. And I don't really get it in the movie. So from that perspective, it seems like there's like a little bit of fluff. But the one thing that I feel like needs to be kind of iterated about this movie is just the performances. The level of performance is high, very, very, very high. From that level of with the Academy Award reign that was bestowed upon this movie in 2007, 2008, you can totally feel that. Josh Brolin is awesome. Tommy Lee Jones is awesome. Kelly MacDonald is awesome. Woody Harrelson is awesome. Of course, Javier Bardem. And it's so weird because Micah, when we were watching this, she's like, oh, I know that guy, Javier Bardem. And I'm like, I don't know who the fuck that is. I've seen that face, but I don't know who he is. And then I went and looked at I have it up here, his Wikipedia page. He won an Academy Award for this, but is nominated 3 other times and has like a whole separate wiki page just for his filmography. And I'm like, how do I not know who this person is? I do not know if I've ever seen a movie with this person in it, or at least that I don't remember seeing him in it.
Yeah.
In looking at his filmography, it's like, I've definitely seen some of these movies, but I don't remember him in it, but he's exceptional. So everyone's performances are really great. And I guess it starts there. Let's talk about them. How do you feel about these actors? It's one of those things. And the book does a good job of this. This is, of course, the great advantage of The Road as well. And in an even more extreme way is that he just focuses on so few characters that you do seem to get to know them very well, even though it's just a slice of their life, a very brief slice of their life. You kind of get them. And I really dig that. So what do you think about the various performances in the film?
Oh, dude, they're so, it's one of those things. It's really one of those films where, and of course I was fortunate because I saw the movie first. So by the time I got around to the book, I was already seeing the characters this way in their cinema, their cinema presentation. But I mean, let's start with Tommy Lee Jones, right? I mean, you think about him being this consummate actor. He pops up in things. He's always good. I think about him with The Fugitive previously, where he plays the cop pursuing Harrison Ford's character. Of course, you think about him in the Men in Black series. But I don't think I fell in love with Tommy Lee Jones until the opening monologue of this movie. The opening 3 minutes where he's talking over the various vistas and landscape of this West Texas place. And dude, he is just, there's so much gravitas in his performance. I know Tommy Lee Jones is from West Texas. I know he's of that place. And it does feel very authentic. You buy him as this aging sheriff who's having trouble evolving with the times and just really takes exception to the way things have been going in this place and just longs for a past time where things were simpler, less dangerous, less deadly, and all of this. But I mean, I think it really starts with him. I think he just lends so much gravity to the film. And I don't know, for you, in having read the book first, were you seeing it this way? Did you like him in the part and all of that?
Yeah, I didn't know who was really playing anyone, so I envisioned him just as an old man who is torn. See, the one thing that the book does more than the movie, and I keep mentioning the book because it's not supposed to be about the book, but it does a really good job of setting him up with his wife a lot more. They talk a lot more about his family life and his home life, and you also learn about. They don't talk about it at all in the movie about how he won an award basically like as a coward in World War II, and I think it was World War II. Maybe it was Korea, but I think it was World War II because I think he was in France or something like that. And there's this whole thing chasing him and kind of painting his character that we don't ever learn about in the movie. So they cut that out for a reason. I don't know that it necessarily needed to be there for the film adaptation, but he's excellent. I totally agree. They're just such wonderful actors. I think Woody Harrelson is just another one of those guys. We really saw that again when we did True Detective. And it's like, holy moly, man. I didn't know it was like this with you, Woody. And you see another movie like this. And yeah, these guys are excellent. And
so good.
And I got to give a shout out. I said it earlier, but Kelly MacDonald, who I know from a few different things because she was in Black Mirror and some other stuff, but she's really great too. I find that that's exactly the way I pictured Carla Jean, just this very naive young girl and you don't really get to learn very much about any of them, which is fun. Now, what do you think about the story itself? I'm curious what you think about this whole idea. And I know that what was appealing to this to the story for a lot of people was this idea that it's really about just a vignette, as it were, of life on the border between the US and Mexico and how prescient it is and how this book seems to be not predictive, but just it becomes more and more relevant as time goes on. And that's rare. And so that's kind of a cool thing.
Great point. Yeah.
So I dig that. But it's so funny because he finds, the whole story revolves around Moss finding this money, but then going back to the scene of the crime, he could have gotten away with it, which is what is so annoying. Unless, of course, Chigurh got near him with the box, like the electronic box that was tracking him, the tracker. But otherwise, he would have eventually figured it out. It's so frustrating because there are so many moments where it's like, how did you not look in the bag? How did you not look through the money? Why did you go back? They in the movie, they illustrate a lot more about how he seems to go back to give water to the dude, which they don't make quite as clear in the book. It seems like he's going back for other reasons as well, but it's so frustrating. So how do you feel about the way it all opens and the way it's all framed? Because the movie's not so much about him finding the money as much as it's about him going back to the scene of the crime. He just would have gotten away with it. And it's so interesting. I love that because it's frustration from the word go.
Absolutely. And this movie really centers around characters that are moral and virtuous in many ways, but they all have a little bit of moral ambiguity too, which I think is fascinating. And I think that starts with Llewellyn Moss. He's our protagonist. So this whole story set in West Texas, 1980. So West Texas, just coming out of the 70s, based around a drug deal gone wrong in the desert. And a man, a civilian, stumbles upon these drugs and this cash. And then all the characters, the small cast of characters, albeit important characters, surrounding this whole situation. And it really is just a story, I think, at its core about change and dealing with the times and dealing with the era, dealing with something that happens in your life and how you're going to adapt to that change. And then the characters surrounding this situation and how the events play out for them. And with Llewellyn, he's an interesting guy, right? What do we know about him? He's a younger guy, served a couple of tours in Vietnam. So he knows how to take care of himself in a crisis situation, in a combat situation. He's a lower blue collar guy who's a welder by trade. He's married to a young girl. They live in a West Texas trailer park, and he stumbles, upon this suitcase full of $2.4 million. And what do? He does what most of us would do. He takes the money. And then, as Colin said, he takes the money. There is a transponder in there, at first unknown to him, so a locator. But then in this massacre that he stumbles upon in the desert with all these dead guys and machine guns and dead pit bulls and blown up pickup trucks, he stumbles upon one guy who's still alive in the cab of one of these pickup trucks. And the guy's a Mexican guy asking for water. And Llewellyn's trying to sleep that night with his satchel of money stashed under his trailer. And it seems like his conscience is bothering him. And he goes and fills up a jug of water in the sink and goes to take it out to this guy, this dying man in the middle of the desert. And that's what kicks off this cat and mouse serial killer chase of this man who Llewellyn's interesting because he's our hero. He's our protagonist. We are rooting for him, but at the core of this situation, he has done something wrong. He's taken money that doesn't belong to him. And then he has to pay for his actions. It seems like he's trying to satisfy his consciousness by taking water out to this guy in the desert, whatever he thinks that's going to do. But I love that because it feels like a very human reaction to dealing with his guilt, essentially, right? He's probably a decent man. He's on the up and up. He's a blue collar worker. He abides by the law for the most part, but he's done this one thing and he feels bad about it. So what is he going to do? He's going to take this water out to the guy in the desert. And what we know of Llewellyn too, not only is he's not some simple bumpkin. He's a smart dude. You see the way he handles himself in the desert, the way he figures the situation out. He's just as smart as any police officer, and of course he has that Vietnam background. We know he's a hunter. He's hunting pronghorns in the desert when he comes across this whole debacle, which is interesting too, because the one mistake he makes, besides not finding the transponder right away, is even showing up in the desert again, where now his pickup truck's there. They get the VIN number. The Mexican cartel members come. They get the VIN off the pickup truck. Now they're on him. Now they got him. And if he didn't show back up, what would have happened? Not sure.
Yeah, we're not sure, but I think it was unclear to me about what the strength of the transponder was in the book, but in the movie, it seems like it's not very strong. Like he is driving in a direction, I guess, but he doesn't really pick up anything until he gets pretty close to it. It almost felt like it had the range a little bit more than like a garage door opener or something. Sure. This is 1980. Right. So it's not pulsing out this crazy beam of energy, I don't think. So it's possible that he may have never discovered it. And as long as Chigurh never got, and I can never really say his name because they do say in the book that it's pronounced like sugar.
Yeah. They do say that specifically.
They don't say,
in the book.
Yeah. They don't say it in the they don't say it like that in the movie, which I was surprised about. But that he might have never, as long as he didn't get into a specific proximity of the desert air.
Yes.
Mobile home encampment, that he might not have ever picked it up. So it really is going back to the scene of the crime. And I also love, Dag, about, with Llewellyn's intent. It does seem like he feels bad about the guy, but does he feel like he needs to do this? Is he afraid that someone saw him? Like, is he afraid that the guy's going to live? We don't really, because he's not the narrator of the story, which is cool. And it's an outside narrator. We don't know. We only know what they tell us. Right.
Yeah.
So it's cool because we're talking about how smart he is. And so he must know that he's going back, and it's dangerous because in my mind, it would be like beyond getting your truck stolen like he does and them figuring out who he is because of the license plate and all the shit that falls apart because of that. Don't you just think that eventually someone's going to come look for this shit? Like, why would you go back? Why are you going back? Why are you going back? And maybe it is that guilt that he feels about not only the body, but about taking the money. But it's so interesting to me that he just does whatever. He makes the wrong move. You know?
He really does. Is he looking for answers? Is he looking for closure? Does he want to get caught? I mean, it's almost like it's one of those ambiguous things in the movie where we got to kind of read into it a little bit, but there's something in that makes it feel very authentically human to me, where it's like he might not even know, he might just be reacting to one of the craziest things that could possibly happen to a human being and stumbling upon this money and this drug deal gone wrong and this mass murder out in the desert, like something completely unexpected, and just kind of the trauma almost of dealing with that and questioning yourself and having to answer to your wife and lie to your wife and wanting a better life. It's interesting. I mean, I think at the core of this, like, would you put yourself in Llewellyn's place? Would you have taken the money?
Yeah, Walter Boley actually wrote into this. I was going to ask us that later, but so thank you, Walter, for writing in. What would we have done? He asked.
Sure.
And it's like, yeah, I would have taken it. Definitely. But I think I don't know, like there are different ways you could have handled this, especially in 1980.
Sure.
Now, of course, you don't have the view of the way things could have been, where you're not getting away with that today. There's just too many different ways to track you. But in 1980, I'm not so sure. Maybe what you do, because it's important to note that Moss is out hunting. Like, he's not doing anything wrong. He's just dicking around.
Yep.
And he stumbles upon this. So an option for him would have been to take the money and then report that he found this crazy shit in the middle of the road, including all the drugs. He left all the drugs there. He's like, yeah, here's all the heroin. Right. And so he could have like had the best of both worlds, which is what's even more frustrating, because it is said by Tommy Lee Jones. He notes that there's no money here, and they have that awesome discourse with him and the deputy. He's like, do you believe that there's no money? He's like, no, I don't ride do, or whatever the hell kind of weird shit he says. And so he doesn't quite believe that there was no money involved, but you could have still imagined where he could have called this in, been like, I was hunting. There's this crazy shit going on. Boop, the money is mine. No one's going to be the wiser. And the best of all worlds. I think so. That's maybe what I would have done. Is been like, all right, I'm going to snipe the money. This is clearly from a drug deal, ill-begotten,
right?
Life-changing. I mean, $2.4 million is life-changing money now. In 1980, that's 4 times more money than it would be today. So yeah, what would you have done, Dake? Do you think you would have taken it?
I thought about this at length. I think I'm such a worrier and really a worrywart at my core that I think I would have taken it, but I think I know my dumbass. I would have been justifying it to myself that I'm taking the money clearly from drug dealers, from a drug cartel, from bad guys. And that's how I would justify it. It's not like I took the lotto winnings from some sweet marm, some sweet grandma, or some Wall Street broker, some innocent Wall Street broker's house, or a Hollywood type or something. Like, this is blood money. And I'm living in a trailer with my wife. I'm honestly, obviously of meager means. I don't have much. I'm a blue collar dude. So let me take this. And I know that's how I would justify it in my own head. But I feel like there's something there beyond even knowing about the transponder, which we don't even know about right away, that there's a locator hidden in this satchel. I feel like I would have transferred the money from that bag into my own, whatever, backpack, brown paper bag, whatever, just for some reason. And I wouldn't have taken all of it. I'm not sure how much I would have taken, but I don't think I would have taken all of it, which leads me to believe that I might have been a little more clever in a go-around sort of way than Llewellyn, because I might have come across the transponder, because he comes across that stack of singles in this otherwise stacks hordes of $100 bills, which is very suspicious. So you see a stack of singles in there, which I love. That's one of those details in the movie where it's like, wow, yeah, they didn't want to cut hundreds of $100 bills, so they put singles in that specific stack or whatever. So good. But I think that would be, I don't know that many people that honestly could say that they wouldn't take $2.4 million.
Well, the reality is if this really happened to me, I'd probably cry and call the cops, but yeah, I like to think that, because it's what you said. If I find a wallet, I find something, it's different. You want to try to return that to people. These guys, I don't know. I mean, you don't want to be on the wrong side of them, but knowing what we know about them, they would have just killed us for seeing them anyway. So you might as well just take the money. He has that great, Chigurh has that great quote later on when he's like, well, did you see me? Like, are you going to kill me, sir? Yeah. It's so good with that whole weird thing. But I want to talk about Josh Brolin just briefly. Nick Gobbler wrote into us and said, movie is a brilliant masterpiece. And I remember reading the script before seeing the film. Perfect translation to film. I believe that Joel from The Last of Us was loosely based on Josh Brolin's character. This I would believe. It's funny if that's true, because, and I don't know that it is, but I would believe it. And it's funny if it was true, because The Road is so clearly an inspiration for The Last of Us as well, that at that point, it's Cormac McCarthy that is more an inspiration for the Last of Us than anything else. Did you see the connection there between Joel and Josh Brolin's character?
No, but I could certainly, that's a great pull. I could certainly see that. There's definitely some things in there. I think there's definitely some points of comparison, and it's interesting with Llewellyn, because again, you're trying to see, for me, I'm watching this movie with a moral compass, right? Everybody is. So you're trying to see which way it's going to work out for him. And again, you're pulling for this guy, but you just know, I love kind of taking this journey with this guy, because you just know at the core of things, he's done something wrong, despite being our protagonist and our hero. And we know he's running from some really bad people. And we know just from his exchanges and the things he does and his interactions with his wife and others that he's not a bad guy. He's just sort of beholden to money, just like every human being, right? Especially think about $2.4 million in 1980s terms. But we just know there's he's done something morally unjust at the center of things. He's kind of brought it on himself. And we're still rooting for him, which I love as a clever sort of ride along, that we're getting to take this journey with this guy, this adventure. Even though if you're kind of betting on karma, we know he can't possibly win, and I'm a big karma guy. I'm a huge karma dude. So I think it's such an interesting journey. And of course, we're not going to spoil the way it plays out yet. We'll get there, but talk about subverted expectations. I mean, this is a masterwork of that.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. No doubt about it. Let's talk about the antagonist, Anton Chigurh. Cody Gardner wrote into us on Patreon, says, hello, Moriarty Bros. I think Javier Bardem's, and I think I'm saying his name right, I don't know if I am.
Yeah.
Chigurh is one of the best movie villains of all time. Do you agree? And what do you think of the ending where he seemingly gets away? So let's talk about this character. What do you think about our friend Anton here? We meet him, as we do in the beginning of the book, in the beginning of the movie, strangling out a cop. And he takes on, and I wanted to make sure I wrote that in my notes, he takes on in the movie an almost Metal Gear Solid boss type persona in my mind, especially with that air gun, that captive bolt pistol, which is a cool, really sick weapon, but it's very Metal Gear. Just like, this is his thing. And he just kind of has like this Terminator-esque walking around doing his thing kind of vibe. But nonetheless, I'm curious what you think about this Academy Award winning performance and how it translates in the film.
Man, so chilling, so ambiguous. One of the great movie villains of all time. I think about all the great movie villains, right? You got Darth Vader. You got who else is a classic? you got the Bond villains, you got Michael Myers, you got Freddy, you got Leatherface, Pinhead, whatever. So part sort of mystical, supernatural serial killer, and then part alien and part human that just kind of abides by these strange, unique codes or whatever. First of all, Javier Bardem is an interesting guy because he seems like such a warm human being. He seems like such a kind spirit, and he's got this really elusive filmography. If you go on and look, he's done all these things that you would know. Oh, he's popped up in this, not just English language films, but in his native Spain, in Madrid, he does a lot of Spanish language films still to this day. And I think he has a home still in Spain. So he's back and forth. I think the last thing I saw him in before this was Vicky Cristina Barcelona, that Woody Allen movie, which is an interesting part too, and a much different part. He plays just a regular dude, and it's about relationships. But what an interesting character. Now, if you start from the novel, the character in the novel is interesting because Cormac McCarthy, even though we know his full name and we know that he's kind of this ruthless, notorious assassin, and he's employed by the drug cartels and stuff, and he's kind of employed in this shadowy underworld where the drug cartels are in line with big business and skyscrapers and corporations, right? In 1980. And like you said, it's kind of prescient because we could see this playing out to 2022. Nothing's changed. It's only gotten worse, right? But here's this character. And first of all, start with his physical appearance. He's got this crazy Dutch page boy haircut. And I always figure, and he's so scary and chilling and imposing and intimidating despite that look. And I always thought that was such a baller move. I always thought that was such a fuck you. It's like, even though this dude looks like this, you're going to be so horrified of this guy. And I thought it was such an interesting choice. It kind of evocative of the era, but also even strange for the 70s coming into 1980 in West Texas. Like a little, you could understand everything being a little behind the times. This is not New York. This is not California. This is not high fashion place. So you would think West Texas would be in 1980 would be like 5 years behind the times. And we could see that in the decor and the cars and stuff like that. But I love that physical appearance and the fact that he's so scary despite that look. And just that you're trying to figure this guy out. And he has a very inhuman presence. He's calm. He's calculated. He has that Michael Myers thing of not rushing after his prey, almost like, I know I got you, so I could kind of take my time. I know I have the upper hand, whatever's going on, so I could kind of walk after you, even though you're running and panicking, and that whole dynamic, which I think is really interesting and scary. And then at the center of that, you see his interactions with other people. The various drivers that he pulls over when he's masquerading as a cop, when he has the exchange with the gas station proprietor and all this kind of stuff. You're trying to figure out, like, this guy has some sort of code. It doesn't even seem to be necessarily about the bounty, about the money that he's obviously employed to go after. And we know about that through his interactions and a little bit about what the Carson Wells character gives us, because they obviously, as a bounty hunter and an assassin, they operate obviously in this same shadowy underworld, and they know of each other, or they've been around each other before. There's some sort of familiarity there. But I mean, I think he's a great villain, and I think he's a very vexing villain, because you're really trying to figure out the whole time what's happening with this guy. I almost think about him a little bit. I think this was accidental, but he almost has a Terminator-esque dynamic. I think even, and I think again, it was probably unintentional with Javier Bardem and his lack of English prowess. Like, he doesn't speak English that well, or at least he didn't 20 years ago when the film was, made, the better 15 years ago. So, and I think that makes him feel a little more alien too. And he feels like this otherworldly supernatural presence. And I think for me, after seeing this so many times, it almost seems to me like he's the angel of death. Like sometimes he'll, like he kills the bird on the bridge and he lets the cat in the motel that's drinking out of the saucer, lets the cat live. He lets the gas station attendant live. He lets the lady who's kind of getting his goat at the trailer park administrator, he lets her live, but he kills the various drivers that he pulls over, the chicken coop guy and the guy earlier in the film. So there's a weird sort of, I guess, a sense of chance blended and mashed up with a sense of chaos. And that just seems like the angel of death to me. It's like sometimes somebody's going to die at his hands. Sometimes they're not. The whole dynamic with the coin. So it's kind of chance mixed with chaos, mixed with this just, I don't know. He's an unstoppable force. I know, again, just in watching and reading about this film at length, like they did a whole thing where there's no music in this film, but they did a thing when Anton is on the move and he's closing in on his prey. They play train sounds behind him, almost as if to say, this is a runaway, unstoppable locomotive. You can't negotiate. You can't cut a deal. This thing's coming. There's no way to stop it. This is a speeding locomotive, and it's going to do what it has to do. There's no way to get the upper hand. And I think he feels like that. He's a real chilling villain. You don't want to see this guy coming for you. And you just see somebody like Llewellyn, who's a guy who knows how to take care of himself. We could see he's smart. He's pragmatic himself. And he's just nowhere. He's completely out of Anton Chigurh's league. A guy like Llewellyn lost. So put yourself in that situation in Llewellyn's spot. It's like there's nobody could get the upper hand on this guy.
Yeah, it's very well said. It's scary. I'm glad you brought up the haircut. Brendan Brewster wrote in about that. He said, "Good day. How do you both feel about this haircut?" Personally, I think it's horrifying on multiple levels and does a fantastic job of conveying the character's psychopathic nature. I agree, Brendan, and I'm not sure. When you read books, and everyone misses things when you read books because you glaze over sometimes. You just don't catch something. I don't remember them describing him like that because in my mind's eye, I didn't see. I don't know how I really saw him. He was kind of a little hazy for me, but.
Yeah,
I didn't see him looking like a psychopath like that, which is cool. However, he does act psychopathically. I love the scenes in the book. I was really interesting. It's not quite as explosive in the film where he blows up the pharmacy windows to like distract everyone so he can go steal everything. I love that scene. And I love the scene at the end where the kids find him and the guy's like, "Oh yeah, gee, yeah, I'll give you my shirt, sir." And all this and like get the money and he ends up living. And we'll talk about that. I dig that. It does seem very Terminator-esque, very Unstoppable Force-esque. You brought up the no music thing. We should talk about that now. Niall G wrote in and said, "I wanted to get both of your thoughts on the lack of any music or score in the film and how it creates tension and unpredictability throughout the story." I have to be honest, I didn't realize it.
Me either.
So I don't know if that's like, well, mission accomplished then. I don't know if that's the kind of thing, but I didn't notice until I was reading about it. But it worked. It's a very interesting point of view. What did you think about that? No score, no soundtrack.
Yeah, there's somebody credited with the music in this movie. Who is it? It's Carter Burwell. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the only music you hear is in the background, very muffled in some of the eating establishments, like the Greasy Spoons and the diners. And there's a very somber track played over the latter part of the credits, or the closing 50% of the credits. But I didn't realize it. I think that really speaks volumes about the movie. You're on the edge of your seat. There's so much tension. You're on this ride fraught with suspense. And I think not even realizing, start to finish, I probably saw this movie 2 or 3 times before I even realized that. And I don't think I ever realized that. I think I had to read about that there was no music. So again, a testament to just this story and the characters and the way we're manipulated. We're manipulated by this movie. It's a masterwork of that. The directing, the dialogue, the masterful dialogue, the cinematography, the writing. Just like the characters seem to all be manipulated by money in the film, we're just manipulated by the goings on. And I think I can't think of anything else. First of all, I can't think of another movie that doesn't have music. Second of all, I can't remember walking away from a a movie experience not realizing something so big. It's like, wait, that movie didn't have, it's like a fever dream. It's like you snap out of it. Like, wait, that movie didn't have music? Holy shit. Are you serious? P.S. It's over 2 hours long. And it, even without the music, even without those accoutrements, right? We feel like it's such a brisk ride because, again, we're so invested and frankly horrified. You know, not only do you have Llewellyn in danger, you have this impending serial killer coming for everybody. And he does come for everybody. And you have Carla Jean, who's a victim, who we'll talk about. And then you're kind of rooting for this aging sheriff too. And how is it going to play out for this guy who's kind of this good guy, but ultimately this reluctant good guy who's afraid, you know, and just, again, pining for a different time and place. You really feel for this guy and you really want to know how it's going to work out for the heroes.
Sorry, I'm writing a note here because I want to remember to ask you about something specific later.
Sure.
But in the meantime, it's interesting. I want to delve deeper into this idea of the drug war. And I think the reason why maybe there was no music or why it worked out the way it has is because it's not supposed to be really a presentation of a story you care about, but rather just, again, a vignette of life on the border at that time and things that were happening. So no, there's no music accompanying any of this or anything. This is just really, you know, quotes, really happening. And this is the way it goes. This is how dark it is. This is how violent it is. This is how staid it is. And so that might have something to do with it. And I wanted to point that out.
Great point.
Let's talk a little bit about Carla Jean, since you brought her up. What do you think of this character? She is a young girl. I don't even know. What is she, in her early 20s, did they say? Something like that?
I think she's supposed to be 19.
19. So, and she's married to a much older man.
Sure.
And she lives in a trailer park. Her mom is back home in Odessa. She's got cancer. She seems very sweet and adoring and obviously very naive. I love the dialogue between the two of them when he comes home that night. And, you know, how he says, like, he's like, yeah, what do you got in that bag? You know, Llewellyn, and it's like $2 million or, you know, a bunch of money or whatever he says, which I dig. I think that's pretty cool. So she was a welcome performance and a very relevant performance because she's really the only woman in the entire movie. So, you know, other than, and again, I think there's really a second prominent woman in the book, which is not Wells. Why can't I think of his name? Bell's.
Ed Tom.
Yeah. Ed Tom.
Yeah.
Bell's wife is much more prominent in the book. So
She
basically
really
this leaves Carla Jean as the only female in the entire movie of any consequence. So what do you think about her character and the performance of Kelly MacDonald?
Yeah, that elusive Cormac McCarthy female character. Supposedly his new novel's coming out. One of them centers around a female character, which is going to be really interesting to read Cormac McCarthy writing about women. Because I think I've read everything now or listened to the audiobook version. So, and they're very spare female characters in his books, which that notorious Oprah interview with him, right? What does he do? He gives almost no interviews. He was born in 1933, so he's been writing since what, the 50s, 60s?
Yeah, I think his first book, which I was looking in preparation, like I've never read his first book, but I think it came out in 1965.
That's The Orchard Keeper.
Yeah, The Orchard Keeper.
Good book. But it isn't, first of all, Kelly MacDonald. The first thing you have to say at the center of the conversation with her is that she's Scottish. You know, she's of Scotland. And I think the first thing I ever saw her in, she had that thick Scottish accent because I think it was Trainspotting in the mid-90s.
Yeah,
right?
Trainspotting, yeah.
And then, of course, I got to know her very well when she was in Boardwalk Empire. She plays Nucky Thompson's wife, Margaret, who I think is supposed to be an Irish character in her 45 episode turn in that series, which I loved, Boardwalk Empire. But seeing her pop up with this West Texas drawl, she's this young Texas girl, and she's so convincing. I mean, what a performance. And even Tommy Lee Jones has gone on record saying, like, I would have never known. And that's where I literally grew up. You know, I'm a 70-year-old man. That's literally where I grew up my whole life. So that performance is so great. And you feel for this character because she really is the one true victim. When Llewellyn takes the money, he's not trying to victimize her or put her in a precarious situation, but that's what he ends up doing. And she's the one who's really beholden to everybody else's actions. And you really feel for her because she's so sweet. She's taking care of her sick mom who has cancer. She's super young. She's still in her teens, which means they've been married for 3 years when we meet them. So she got married when she was 16 years old. She works at Walmart, although Llewellyn tells her she's retired. She's now retired from Walmart. And she's just she's a great character because we're rooting for Llewellyn, especially because of Carla Jean, because we want to see it work out for her. And, it's so chilling when Anton catches up to her at the end of the film, which is more towards the center of the book, I think, right? But at the end, almost to the end of the film where he catches up to her and it's so masterfully executed because, again, a perfect example of show don't tell when he walks out and checks his boots on the porch. But she's the one who maintains a little power over this unholy, hellish serial killer because she refuses to call the coin flip and makes Anton sort of do what he's got to do of his own volition rather than go by these coins which have some kind of odd power over him. And he, some sort these coins operate at the center of his philosophy, his code, and the whatever rules he abides by. And she's the one character who bucks that. And she's this little girl. So a powerful character, even though unfortunately she gets cut like everybody else in this character's path.
Yeah, I'm just flipping through the book. I can't find it where that scene happens. I'm pretty sure, as I said, she does call the coin in the book. I could be wrong.
She does.
That.
Not only that, but right before it says he shoots her, he's kind of explaining his code to her and saying, I got here the same way the coin did. There's no, blah, blah, blah. And he kind of explains his philosophy in not so many words. And she agrees to it. And she says, I do understand. And he says, that's good. And then pulls the trigger. So it's very sad. So I like what they do in the movie where they kind of give her, even though she's murdered, they give her this little win over him. At least, I don't know how you would say it. Intellectually, I guess.
Like a philosophical kind of principled win. Yeah, she's very stoic in the in that scene, which is cool. And I do like the show not tell stuff because the book is very violent. I was very curious to see how that was portrayed in the movie, and the movie's not very violent. Like there's some scary shit, like when he pulls the guy over and he's like, just stay still, and then pops him right in his head. It's very, very but it's not very gory. It's not so bad. I think some of the worst stuff they show in that respect is when he's like pulling the things out of his leg and stitching himself up. And those guys are
doing surgery on himself. Yeah. It's funny because I've seen the Coen Brothers refer to this movie as violent, and I'm just thinking, like, really, like I found think of like the wood chipper scene in Fargo. Yeah,
Fargo, I was going to say, is way more violent, and we're coming off of Game of Thrones as well, not to be sarcastic, but that is just so violent as well. I think maybe we're desensitized a little bit, but I was surprised. I was pleasantly surprised, especially because I was watching with Micah, and she's a little squeamish with that stuff. I'm not.
Sure. Me too.
I don't want to see real life violence, like live leak violence. That's always hard for me to see. You see like a beheading or something like that. It's like, oh God, but a beheading in a TV show when I know it's not real, I'm like, oh, who gives a shit?
Yeah, fiction, right?
Yeah, whatever. So I don't know what that's about. Because you could, the fucked up thing is you could tell me something real was fake, and as long as I really didn't know, I'd be like, oh, okay, that's very, very convincing.
It's so fascinating to me, everybody's stance on that. You have you're much more, you could abide by that kind of stuff. I really can. I'm very squeamish like Micah. Then we have people like PJ who sort of thrive on that, but he's like such a kind soul in real life. Like, it's so fascinating, the little things that makes everybody tick and what they want to see and what they could deal with. I gotta get a little more stoic with that kind of stuff.
That's okay. It is what it is. I mean, I totally understand people. Like, I roll my eyes at sometimes when people are scared of this, that, or the other thing. But it's like, well, I'm scared of my own stuff. So it is what it is.
Sure.
Dig, am I crazy? Or is there an entire... Yes. Or is there an entire section of the book not in the film which is when Moss picks up the random girl.
Yes.
That's not in the movie. They kind of hint at it because he has that like interaction at the motel with the woman at the pool, which I don't know if that's actually in the book. But in the book, for people that didn't read it, he finds this like hitchhiker who's like 15 or 16 years old, this like kind of like slutty girl. I mean, they describe her a little bit like that after she dies in the book as being, you know, that Carla Jean's not going to be so happy that he died in her company because she is also killed with him. And so it's interesting because they're together for like several days, I think, and have this rapport going on, but it's not sexual. I don't know exactly what the hell was going on with that, but why do you think they cut that out of the film? Because I noticed that was missing.
Yeah. In the book, I think, so what we're talking about is in the book, Llewellyn picks up a young teenage hitchhiker. She's 16 on his way. I believe in the book, he's on his way down to El Paso. He picks up this teenager and you're like, oh shit. Because it seems like a lot of the things in the book and in the movie, they're trying to paint Llewellyn as somebody who's not bad. They're trying to kind of bring you back into thinking that this is a virtuous human being, even though he stole this money. It seems like that's a lot of the tactic in the book and the film. And in the book, it's interesting because now you're thinking, all right, this guy is going to be unfaithful to his wife. Now that moral ambiguity or that gray area is starting to wash back in. And so he's with this girl, they're driving, he feeds her, they stop at either the diner, then later on they get nice clothes and they eat at a nicer establishment, and they get to the hotel or the motel and he gets her a separate room. So he's just being like it turns out he's just being like a nurturing father figure to this girl. It seems like there's nothing sort of at play that's, you know, detrimental to her. He's not trying to move in on her. He's not trying to sleep with her. It turns out. So
and she's surprised by that. I mean, that's what she's
shocked
kind of expecting.
because she thinks, she thinks that's what he's going in for. Not only that, but it serves as exposition in the book because he tells her a lot of what's happening. And I think he presents it and it seems so fantastic that she doesn't necessarily believe everything, but it's either cathartic for him or it works as exposition because he tells her a lot of what's happening with him being on the lam and him finding this money and he's being pursued by bad guys and all this other kind of stuff. And it turns out when the cartel catches up to him in the book, that is how it happens in the book too, right? She's killed. And in the movie, they just sort of gloss over it with the woman that's sitting poolside at the motel. And there's that brief flirtation, but he does say that he's married and he's waiting for his wife and he shows his wedding ring and all of that. And then it turns out that woman who is still trying to get him to have beers with her when the cartel catches up to Llewellyn, she is the one floating in the pool. She is killed. But they basically make that female character and that scene much smaller in the film. They kind of, I guess they excise it as unimportant, at least in their version of the story. But that is an interesting choice. And it is a big section of the book. I mean, this kind of road trip with this teenage hitchhiker goes on at length for dozens and dozens of pages. So it is an interesting, and I don't even know. Do we find out her name we must find out her name.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe we do. I don't remember, but
I don't remember that.
Yeah. I thought that I was weird. Because I was interested in who was going to play her and like how that was all going to come off, because I think visually that would have been really interesting to see him not being interested in this other girl at all. But you also wonder in the book if this is how it began with Carla Jean too. I mean, like, we don't really know how they met, and he picked her up at a younger age, obviously too. So it's like
she was 16 at Walmart, right?
Right.
So it's like, wow, is this playing out again?
Right, exactly. So I thought that was interesting, like getting into old habits, but yeah, they don't play into that at all. I don't know why, because I don't think the movie feels long at 2 hours. I feel like you could have given us 2 hours 20. I don't think I would have been disappointed, and I think we could have gotten more of this. So and more of more of Ed Tom's wife as well.
Sure.
Which again is really relevant in the book, because he's kind of, they don't really play it up in the movie, but in the book it kind of is, unless in my interpretation, it's represented as him longing for the normalcy that he realizes he can have as things outside of his control get crazier and crazier. He doesn't want anything to do with it anymore. And his touchstones are these interstitial dinners that he has with his wife where he gets called away.
Sure.
And then finally doesn't. Right. And they don't really they don't really mess around with that so much. Which is interesting because they do have like the horse thing in there where they're talking about renting the horse and how his wife doesn't get paid for it and all that. That is in the book as well.
Sure.
But yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. Let's talk about Llewellyn's death first. John Barnett wrote in and said, "Hey, Moriarty Bros. One of the most shocking parts of the film was Llewellyn's death and how it seemed to come out of nowhere in the film. How did you all feel about this reveal? Personally, I feel it was one of the most impactful deaths I've seen in a movie as it says so much with so little. Thanks." It's surprising because you don't expect him to die. Although Cormac McCarthy isn't precious with his characters, very George Martin-like. So
yeah,
it's not a huge surprise that this happens, but it is surprising nonetheless, because you assume if you're going to frame things on some protagonist, it's him, but it's not. It ends up being more about Ed Tom in the end. And that's kind of telegraphed through the entire story, both in the book and in the film, but more in the book because of all the interstitials. Like the opening dialogue where they're showing all the vignettes of the different landscapes, that whole thing is in the book as an italicized, one of the interstitial chapters. I wish they kept doing that, because that kind of allows it to be framed in that way. But
sure.
Nonetheless, what did you think about Llewellyn dying? Is it expected? Is it sad? I don't know that I feel much of anything about it, because we don't really know anyone who cares about him except for Carla Jean. And the only person we know who cares about Carla Jean outside of Llewellyn is her mom. And her mom doesn't like him.
Yes.
So it seems like in some way, the only somewhat objective view we get of the quality of the man indicates that he's not the best person. But maybe he was. I mean, he was a welder. He has some sort of life for himself. We just don't know enough about him. So it's sad to see someone die. But it's, as you said, he kind of volunteered for this. He entered into this fracas himself. He didn't have to take the money. He didn't have to get involved. He didn't have to go back, which is, again, the entire crux of it all when they steal his truck. So talk to me about his death.
Yeah, I mean, this is that subversion, right? You're not expecting the hero of your story, even though he's a strange hero. He's not an anti-hero, but he's kind of a strange hero, kind of a strange protagonist, to die just a little over halfway through the film. And he's not murdered at the hands of the guy going after him. He's not murdered at the hands of the antagonist of the film and the guy that we're expecting to catch up with him. He's murdered by some random Mexican cartel guys that are, sort of embroiled in this jackpot that the mother-in-law inadvertently gives them the information of where he's going and catch up to him before Sheriff Bell could get there. Right before he gets there. I mean, a minute before he gets there. So it is kind of shocking. And I love what you have to say about Llewellyn, because we are, even though we're rooting for him, I think we're rooting for him because the baddies are so bad, not because the goodies are so good, if that makes sense. And, it's just we're kind of just manipulated into rooting for this guy. And we want to see it work out. I think, again, a big part is Carla Jean. But they do some really interesting things when Llewellyn gets out of the hospital, right? And he gets his natty new clothes, and he's in like the bus station, and he's calling Carla Jean and telling her what to do, and he's leaning on his case of money. He's on the phone, and he looks very kind of sure of himself and very satisfied with himself, his pose and his clothes, and he's all duded up, right? And a girl walks by, a random woman walks by, and he checks her ass out while he's talking to Carla Jean. And so it gives you it keeps spoon feeding you this moral ambiguity and kind of forces us to question ourselves as, are we rooting for this guy or not? Like, he's in the middle of a life and death situation trying to coach his wife through it. And, she is completely innocent of all of this. And he's checking a woman's ass out when he's trying to explain something important. It's like those little things are such clever touches to put in there. And yeah, it really lets us know too, I think, when Llewellyn dies, because you're ping-ponging around between Llewellyn, Anton, and Sheriff Bell. Then when Llewellyn is murdered, it kind of leaves us, it's kind of our cue to say, okay, this is Sheriff Bell's story. Llewellyn was just kind of the last straw that broke the camel's back in this man's story, and him sort of dealing with the way it's become in this place where he lives and works. And that's really what the Llewellyn murder is. It's that catalyst for Sheriff Bell throwing his hands up this already reluctant force sort of this is his moment to retire. This is what drove Sheriff Bell over the edge. And that's what Llewellyn's death is. Basically, that's what it does. That's what it means.
Yeah, he I think it's Ed Tom that says it's the dismal tide, or it's one of the that's such a awesome
the two sheriffs.
Yeah, it's like that's a really great quote, and I wanted to make sure to jot that down as well. What do you think about Chigurh saying to him and to Carla Jean, and rightfully so, based on this code, that he could have saved her? Like, he chose not to. It's another reason to kind of root against him, because it is true. If you take Anton at his word on his principles, then when he says, like, there is no escape for you, when he's talking to him in the hospital, he's like, but if you give me the money, like, Carla Jean will be fine. And that's when he's like, I'm going to make you a special project. Mine hangs up the phone. That's Carla Jean's death warrant, right? I mean, do you think so?
Absolutely, dude. I mean, that's the interesting thing about this whole story. 9 guys out of 10 that were operating opposite of Llewellyn probably could have got the better of. Not this fucking guy. And Carson Wells comes into... Now, I know Llewellyn doesn't know Carson. And we'll talk a little bit about the Carson.
Yeah, we'll talk about Carson Wells, because I feel like it's so confusing. This whole bounty hunter thing is interesting to me. It just indicates that there's a circular cat and mouse game, but we don't really get to know more. It's like a cat and mouse game, but we don't know.
No.
Right.
No.
So it just suggests it. I find it quite ambiguous in both versions of the story.
It is, but it is fascinating to me, because it always meant to me from very, very early on in watching this movie, before I watched it half a dozen times, that I love what it says in not so many words, that there is this deep-seated, deep-rooted, shadowy underworld that operates below this drug trade, this border heroin trade between Mexico and the United States that we all know of. They're in that exact region in an era where it was getting thick. And there's these big businesses, corporations, billions of dollars, skyscrapers, executives that exist in this world. It's not just, Mexicans in beat up pickup trucks with Uzis killing each other in the desert. This is Coca-Cola. You know what I mean? This is General Electric operating at the head of this thing. And there's some sort of, there's tiers, there's a hierarchy, all that kind of stuff. And in this world, you have drug dealers, you have drug creators, you have bounty hunters, you have assassins, you probably have vying corporations at the head of this thing. So in this world, there are employed these, Carson Wells is, we find out he's not only is he a Vietnam veteran, he's a retired colonel, Army colonel. He's an officer that, so these are not only smart people, these are people with huge military backgrounds, successful people, but also people that know how to operate in this sort of, this sort of world. And so the Anton Chigurh character comes into the hospital. Now, Llewellyn doesn't know him, but he's saying, look, I'm obviously not the guy who's going to kill you. And he warns him. He said, I know this guy, and there's no negotiating with him. He's going to kill you just for inconveniencing him. And when it comes down, now Llewellyn and Anton have their shootout in the street. They have their face off. They're both seriously wounded. They come away from it right. They never meet face to face, but they have that phone call. And Anton says to him, like, you have the choice to save your wife. If you give me the money now, you can't save yourself. I'm being honest with you. You're dead, but you could still save your wife. Now, put yourself in Llewellyn's situation. He doesn't want to die. Nobody wants to die, right? He knows at this point what he's up against, because when he bangs that receiver on the wall, he knows this isn't going to be easy. He knows he's dealing with a force of nature here, and a force of evil, I think. And a force of inevitability, I would say, too. And I think what ends up happening is, I just feel for Llewellyn in this moment, because what do? Do you sacrifice yourself and the money just to say, and not only that, B, can you take this sociopath, psychopath at his word? How does he know he's not going to go kill Carla Jean? Right. But then to add insult to injury, when Anton does catch up to Carla Jean, he tells her that it's not bad enough that he's going to be there to murder her. He says Llewellyn had a chance to save you and he didn't. Now she says to him, it's not, she's wise enough to know her husband. And she says, not like that, not like you say. And it's not like that. It's not like he says, but in not so many words, in some sense, it is true. You know, he did have the chance to at least save her. So that's interesting, right? Because do you have so much love for a person? Think about your most beloved, right? Do you put yourself and your money on the line and just take for granted that he won't, that murderer will do what they say and just leave your loved one alone? That would be true love, right? But it's still a risk. So you could understand Llewellyn's position. It's very it's much like this film and this story at the core of it. There's so much simplicity, but so much complexity. You know, there's so much moral complexity and so many questions.
Definitely. And with the Stephen Root character, who's a really good character actor. I like that guy a lot.
Oh God, he's so good.
But him kind of popping up, and then I do love the scene when he's killed, because the guy is standing there, like we were making fun of him earlier. He also gets killed, but he's not surprised. The guy's not surprised that this happened. Like he's not. He talks to Anton like he understands the business that he's referring to and all this. So there are a lot of people in on it. So yeah, the suggestive nature of it is really cool, even though they don't get very far into it, and certainly don't explore it very deeply in the film at all.
No, or in the book.
No, but I think more so in the book. We get more of them in the book, I think, than we do in
that's true. Yeah.
In than anything else. But let me see here. Let's talk about this. Wade wrote in and said, "Hi, Brother Colin and Uncle Dagan. I first watched this film back when it came out in 2007 at the age of 17, and it's become one of my favorites of all time. From the near perfect direction and an excellent cinematography to the creepy villain and amazing writing, it deserves to be called one of the greats in film history. But there's one thing I've always wondered. What is your take on the ending? I feel like the bad guy wins and the good guy loses. So does that bother you that at the very end, it seems like the bad guy not only wins, but gets away? I mean, he's not mortally, but he's very injured, bones sticking out of his arm and all this kind of shit. But he seemingly gets away, and he's the worst actor of all of them. And he seems to pay the fewest consequences. And it scares a good cop off the beat. And, you know, he says something like at some point, like, I feel overmatched or whatever.
Sure.
In that really interesting scene with his brother. Is it his brother and brother-in-law? I think it's his
brother. Uncle or his cousin.
Oh, it's his uncle or cousin.
But I've heard both.
Okay.
And if you look at the conversation in the book and the movie, it's kind of ambiguous their ages, but it's one of the two, Uncle Ellis or Cousin Ellis.
Yeah. So what do you think about that? About how it all? I mean, do you feel like it's a worse off story for not having a good feel good ending, or is the feel good ending that Ed Tom kind of gets out? Is that the feel good ending? Knowing with foresight that we or hindsight rather, reading and watching and all of this now, that the drug war just gets worse and worse. So he kind of gets out with his head, which is good.
Sure. And he says he doesn't want to push his chips forward. And he says he doesn't want to go out, ride out and meet people that he doesn't understand their code. And he talks about the kid that he brought to the electric chair in Huntsville, and how they were just unapologetic murderers, and on death row said they would do it again. And just kind of this world that is so far above his head that he just has no way of reckoning with it. And I love that. Now, the ending with Anton and the car accident, which happens much earlier in the book and not at the end of the film, like it does in the movie, it's interesting because in that moment, think about it. You're like, the entire time, all the characters in the film, except for Anton, seem beholden to the forces of nature, life, fate, chance, whatever it is. Why not this guy? And then all of a sudden, this guy kills the character you're probably rooting for the most, the victim, and he's riding into the sunset, and all of a sudden he's going through a green light and he's T-boned horribly by a speeding station wagon. And you're like, in that moment, you're like, oh shit, okay, he's beholden to the same rules as everybody else. And then you realize he just has a compound fracture of his arm. He's a little beat up, but he's going to survive. Pays off a kid. Again, everybody's subject to money. Everybody's beholden to the almighty dollar. And he does stroll into the sunset, and you hear the cops coming, but you know this guy's going to get away. And you're like, holy shit, this guy is above it all. And again, subversion and storytelling. It's not the hero. The one that wears white doesn't always win, and the one that wears black doesn't always lose. It's not like that. You know what I mean? This isn't an old Western. This isn't John Ford. And, this isn't the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is different. And this is the new Western. This is what Bell's talking about. This is how the world's going and the things that he's having trouble dealing with. The ending with Sheriff Bell is interesting because, through the whole story, you see him grappling with this, pining for the past, telling stories about how the old timers didn't even wear guns on their belts, and just longing for a world that's long since gone, long since disappeared. And he has this whole philosophy of, the things are getting so crazy, the world seems so dark and evil that there's no way of wrapping your head around it. There's just no way to understand it. And you see him, not only does he say he's reluctant and he's always looking worried and exhausted and just like a punching bag, right? Every time his deputy comes in and is like, the DEA and the Rangers are going down to the scene. Do you want to go? He doesn't want to go. He tells the woman at the police station to call his wife because she'll talk him into coming home instead of going to El Paso, all this kind of stuff. We see how reluctant he is. We see how this job has beat this man into the ground, and he really doesn't want, not only does he not understand it, he doesn't want to do it anymore.
Right.
And I think his retirement, right before the end of the film, he's having the conversation with Loretta at the breakfast table, and he's saying how he's adjusting with retirement and with the idea of not working anymore. So we see him go into retirement. I think it's good for the larger West Texas community because this guy is no longer capable of serving. He can't understand what he's dealing with. So how is he going to fight it if he can't even understand it? But it's a bleak ending for me because I think the toll that this job has taken on this man is permanent. He talks about a dream that he had of his dad, two dreams that he had of his dad, who was also a Texas lawman, deceased, but how he met him in a dream and he was going on ahead to make a fire like the old timers did in the snowy mountain pass. And he basically told me when I got there, in other words, when I died, he'd be waiting for me. And his last line is, then I woke up. So basically being resigned to even the idea of a heaven or a paradise or an afterlife, that this man has seen such grim shit. And he's seen basically his world go to hell in a handbasket to such a degree that, to me, what this ending says is he doesn't even believe that there's going to be an end to that or there's going to be a rest from that, which is fucking dark, man. That's some dark shit. But I love the balls on that to end the movie like that, where it's like, yeah, he won. He survived. He said he didn't want to push his chips forward. Nobody wants to die, man. Nobody wants to be 6 feet under the ground, but it's not really, he lived, but is it really a victory? So that's what it makes you. Yeah, he's going to have retirement with his wife and hopefully they live for many years in their twilight years and enjoy their old age. But is he going to? He's haunted, and I think that's what the ending says, that he just has that outlook, that really negative outlook. And I think that's what the job planted in him. I think that's the seed that took root.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I think that there's the silver lining is, for me, is the warmth that he feels from a Loretta that he doesn't get anywhere else. Like the yearning for the normalcy that she brings. And I love how she's portrayed in both stories, in both iterations, as being kind of a no nonsense, but understanding, kind, and kind of mild mannered woman that contrasts with the craziness outside, and I dig that. I have one final question I want to explore from Caspa, who wrote into us and said,
Yo,
greetings, Super Moriarty bros.
Yo.
No Country for Old Men is such a memorable movie in my eyes because of how impactful a vast majority of the scenes are in the film and the feeling that they instill into the viewer. My question for you guys is, what scene was most memorable for you personally? For me, it has to be the Texaco scene. How an innocent and defenseless gas station proprietor can instantly put his life in danger by simply having an inquiry about the weather always makes me feel a sense of dread and anxiety because we, the viewer, know who Anton is and have seen him for what he is capable of up to this point. I find this to be frankly one of the most stressful scenes in the film, for the whole terrifying conversation between the two that ultimately end with Chigurh deciding the fate of the proprietor on the coin flip, I feel is what makes it arguably one of, or if not just the best scene in the movie, period. Thank you for writing in, Caspa. There are multiple scenes that are memorable. That is an amazing scene, again, in both the film and the book. And I like that you brought up the woman that won't give him any trouble, that won't give him any information from the desert air or whatever, because that's funny in the book too. And that does portray funny in the, like a moment of levity in an otherwise really dark film. But what I wanted to say was that what I dug were any film or any part of the film where you see people that don't, the type of people that, and I put in my notes, don't ask questions. Fascinated by these kinds of people. We only see them in brief moments in the movie, but it's, or in either iteration of the story really, but it's like when he goes in, he's clearly fucked up for some reason when he goes and buys clothes, right? But they kind of don't ask any questions. They're willing to, I love shit like that. Like just the kind of the wink and the nod. The motel gives him $100 bill and says, I'm not asking you to do anything illegal, but just call me if anyone checks in. And it's just these kind of normal, but very criminal interactions that, or sometimes criminal interactions that I think are really fascinating, that are the heartbeat of the film and the heartbeat of the book. So what sticks out to you in that regard?
You know what? The gas station scene, you have to send that one up because there's so many questions there with the gas station attendant. If this gas station attendant not necessarily engage with Anton in conversation, but if he didn't say something that could come across as nosy or sort of, I guess nosy is the way to put it, with saying like, I noticed what kind of weather you're having up in Dallas. I noticed you were from Dallas type of thing. Which for Anton, his anonymity is important, right? He's a hitman. So he's thinking like, this guy's getting in, this guy's too big for his britches. He's getting in and over his head here. And he takes it he seems to take it, that neighborly conversation, as a personal affront. If the gas station attendant didn't enter into the conversation with anything or in that way, would that exchange have happened? I'm not sure. But it does evoke that confrontation with the proprietor or the administration lady at the Desert Air trailer park complex, because you think that woman is going to get it because she gives him guff like no other character, and he walks away. Again, it's that randomness, that chance, chaotic nature of that death. It's like, and just the fear that the gas station attendant, gas station owner has in knowing like he's dealing with a crazy person. Like when that switch goes off and he reacts that way to just a passing line of conversation, and he reacts with such anger and hostility, and he knows he's in a bad situation. Just that tension of watching it the first time and knowing how is this going to pan out. And that amazing thing with the candy wrapper sort of quaking or unfurling on the counter. Just like one of those things, like, how do you even think of that? I mean, it's just like, it's just poetry. I mean, that's just writing. That's just quality. So that I would definitely send that up as well. And the comedic way that scene ends too. And the relief that we feel as an audience, the relief of the gas station owner, right? We feel his relief. And then Anton saying, don't put that coin in your pocket. And then it's saying, don't treat it like just a coin, which it is. It's like that chaotic nature of that whole thing. It's like, what did it even mean except to just get our hearts in our throats? I would send that up. Another scene you talked about earlier, Kyle, which is a haunting scene, is when Llewellyn goes back to the scene of the drug deal gone awry, and he's pursued by the men in the pickup truck, and then jumps in the river, and then has to swim away from the dog, and then load the wet gun and shoot I mean, that's a masterwork of action and tension. And I think Josh Brolin did that with a broken shoulder. a broken collarbone, which is crazy to think about in real life.
Yeah, that is such a painful injury.
And you know what? The other one I would really send up as a memorable scene, besides the ending, which I just love. I love the opening monologue and I love the closing Sheriff Bell monologue too. I think the other scene that comes back to me is when we meet Carson Wells, because it shows, like Llewellyn, the exchange he's having with this businessman, and we know automatically Carson's either a hitman or a bounty hunter or whatever, and he's being clever and very flippant and aloof, but he's also saying, like, I counted the floors from the street, like there's one missing. So we know how crafty and pragmatic and smart this guy is, and I think they set him up to be a very important character, which is only compounded by the fact of later on showing up in Llewellyn's hospital room. It's like, oh, this guy's going to be the white hat that jumps in to save the day. And it turns out even a guy of this magnitude of intelligence and prowess is no match for Anton. So I love, that the way that these characters exist only to kind of play up how much we should fear another character. Just good story. It's just wonderful storytelling.
Definitely.
And there was one more scene I wanted to call up, but I can't remember what it was for some reason. Let me think real quick. Oh, which scene I have to talk about. And it's a little ambiguity here, and I've heard many takes on it. It's interesting that this is still a thing that people are trying to figure out. But when Sheriff Bell shows up in El Paso at the murder scene of Llewellyn, right? That's El Paso, the El Paso motel. And it's nighttime now. And before he rides out for home, the crime scene is taped off, and there's 2 hotel rooms. There's room 114 and 112. And he's just not satisfied, right? He knows this is kind of his last stand against this unspeakable, elusive evil in Anton. And he unholsters his gun, and we know Anton's hiding in one of the rooms. We see him hiding behind the door of one of the rooms, and it's a coin toss because Anton's in one of the rooms and he's not in one of the rooms. And which one is Sheriff Bell going to choose? And he chooses the one that Anton's not in. So he gets the coin toss right. And otherwise he could have went out to meet his maker in that moment if he chose the wrong door. Now, I've seen a lot of confusion about this, that Anton was in the same room, but I think that's what this scene is saying, that there was 2 doors to choose from. And so in other words, Sheriff Bell did have his coin toss moment as well. And he chose well. He chose survival. And because in that moment, Anton's standing there in the dark with his gun, his silenced shotgun at the ready. And I think that's such a memorable scene. And I've heard Roger Deakins, the cinematographer, say that's one of his favorite scenes. And you could just see the way it's lit with the shadows. Again, I think it's just beautifully done. And that's what I'm left with at the end of this experience, is that it's really a bleak movie. It even ends on for me, a pretty sour note. And there are very few movies that have this resonance or have this tone that resonate the same way, where you want to rewatch it almost like Indiana Jones, like Raiders, like a great adventure serial, like a good Star Wars movie. You want to, it almost has that comfort movie resonance for me, even though it's not a comforting movie. It's a pretty hard movie to watch, but for some reason, it just keeps you coming back for more. And I think that speaks to its artfulness, not its tone. And again, like, salut, like I give the audience a huge nod for voting for this one.
Yeah, I agree. It's very good. And I'm glad you brought the cinematography, because in closing, I just want to give a shout out to that as well. There's something special about films filmed properly in the Southwest desert, arid, those really special looking, colorful skies, the yellows, the reds, the pinks,
Sure.
Obviously the blues. They also really captured the poverty of the area and all the rest. And I love the shots of the truck, like when they do a lot of nice foreshadowing with a lot of the shots where they show the truck on the silhouette of the truck, and then they look back and there's like another truck next to it and all that. So they constantly like frame things in twos, which I think is pretty neat. I will say my one complaint about the framing is that they they do a pretty good job of managing real locations and stuff like that, but I couldn't help but see like a real Domino's pizza sign, like a modern Domino's pizza sign in the background of a shot.
Yeah, Wendy's.
Carl's Jr., Wendy's. Yeah, I'm like, these
they're
Wendy's,
modern ones, though.
Yeah, modern. Like, because Wendy's and Carl's Jr. would have existed. I don't know if Domino's would have, but these were modern signs. Like, and they just kind of bother me. Like the Domino's, especially if you see the Domino's in the background, because when like you could tell, I'm like, that's like totally not right.
That stands out.
Yeah, it does. Because they do obviously a really nice job otherwise with the cars and the trucks. The money obviously itself indicates that it's old. So yeah, it's very well done otherwise. I'm really glad people voted for it as well. No Country for Old Men. You can watch the film, the 2007 film, or read the book, 2005, or do both. We appreciate you guys voting for it. Dagan.
I would recommend both for sure.
Me too.
Know what the other thing is, Kyle? That Ellis, that uncle/cousin Ellis scene, he reminds Tom. This is the other thing that's kind of like, where does this play in? And how does this whole thing play into the story and what Sheriff Ed Tom Bell is feeling? Because his cousin Ellis was a deputy in the same area and basically tells a story about how this country's always been hard on people, and tells a story of their respective uncle many decades earlier in 1909, who was killed on his porch by Indians, by Native Americans, and how he was unapologetically murdered in his own home, and how this country has always been dangerous. It's always been hard. It's always been inhospitable and, just sort of hard on people. And the way that doesn't, like the Loretta character, it just doesn't seem to give the sheriff character any comfort. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't do anything to quell his uneasiness or his lack of, I guess really it doesn't, his lack of being able to feel like he could perform in this world anymore, at his job and live in this universe that's just so beyond him now, which I thought was so interesting. And the other key scene that I have to talk about talk about tension is when right before Anton and Llewellyn have their shootout at the hotel, Anton's standing outside the door and Llewellyn's sitting there with the shotgun. And Anton's going to use that captive bolt stunner to shoot the lockout. Mm-hmm. And it's going to happen. And it happens, and it like seriously injures Llewellyn, because earlier on when you see it happen, and it hits the wall and leaves the imprint, you're like, whoa, what if that actually hits somebody?
Right.
That's like the force of a cannonball.
I love the shot too when it hits the wall and Ed Tom's like looking at it, and the framing it like follows him looking at the thing and then just going down and seeing the thing sitting there. It's very well done.
So good.
Very well done.
Good shit, my friend.
All right, Dave. Well, that's No Country for Old Men. Let's end our conversation here on KnockBack like we do each and every week with a dad joke. I leave it to you.
All right. We're going down into the, I say down, but maybe it's up into the nursery school ranks with this one. But okay, I think it's excellent. Cute. Kyle, where do fruits go on vacation?
I don't know.
Paris.
That's pretty bad.
Safe for your 3-year-old.
That's very good. All right, my friend. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Last Stand Media, KnockBack, etc. Support us on Patreon. Follow us on YouTube and on free feeds if you'd like. You can also buy merch at laststandmedia.store, including t-shirts, stickers, and all the rest. Free shipping on all stickers domestically. I don't know if it's free shipping internationally. I don't think it is, but domestically for sure, it's free shipping for stickers. So thank you for that. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye. KnockBack, a retro and nostalgia podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from Central Virginia and the Philadelphia suburbs, USA. The show was conceived by and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Dagan Moriarty. KnockBack's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including KnockBack, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level or higher on Patreon, and we're grateful for your kindness and generosity.